Chances that happen. Okay, excuse me. Let me.
Good morning. Good morning and welcome. I'm Derek Aaron, the director of the museum. I have the honor of introducing our next speaker in our community event series. Some of us know him as principal, professor, bus driver, vocational teacher, carpenter, but we all know him as friends. Please welcome the most popular guy in the room, Dr. Larry.
If y'all, pardon me, if you'll go to the dictionary and look up the phrase gluttony for punishment, y'all are gluttons for punishment for coming today. But I sure appreciate it. Oh gosh, this is just like we may get to this program, but I could just have so much fun with all of you. And every time I see each one of you, I think of some story. Now, are we doing okay back there, Mr.? Okay, good. Mr. Canetto's in charge. Okay, so I have only 104 slides. So Dr. Patty Abraham was one of my fellow faculty members at Mississippi State, and she told me, Larry, make it brief. I thought she was talking about underwear. Anyway, we're going to talk a little bit about woodworking, and I'm so thrilled to have some real genius woodworkers in the room, some of whom I've not seen in at least 45 years, and some since longer than that. But we're going to have fun. I'm going to have fun. I hope you'll go along with me. So that is true that the Herschede stuff that we got from them really is, let me go back this way, really is precious. So some of you don't know anything about me. Fall on your knees and count and thank the good Lord in heaven above right now for that. But in case you don't know, I grew up out on the I spent my early years out on the Octalk Road. I've not grown up yet, don't intend to. So some of you know where we used to be the fourth house on the right past Oak Store, up there where the roundabout is now, but we're the first house now because they built those monstrous apartments there. And anyway. Okay, then I got a little bit of class work at Mississippi State, and then if you teach at Mississippi State, they don't believe that our degrees are any good, so if you want to get a terminal degree, you have to go somewhere else, unless you are a special person. And there's one person in here who's so special that they got a doctorate at Mississippi State and were hired. Anyway, so I learned a lot driving from Starkville to Tuscaloosa. I would meet faculty from the University of Alabama over there around Reform, Alabama. They're headed west to Mississippi State to get their doctorate. And I don't know why in the world we didn't just meet over there in Reform and swap notes. I don't know. So then I was fortunate after I graduated with a bachelor's degree and master's, and got the bachelor's one semester and the master's the next semester, and that was a trick pulling that off. So I was able to get hired at Henderson Junior High School. Now, the short story, I don't even really know any short stories, but the short version of this story is that when I was a little boy, people would say, Larry, what do you want to be when you grow up? Always it was a missionary. I wanted to be a missionary. My family was very involved in missions, local and world missions. And so I thought that God would honor me with an opportunity to go to Africa or Europe or South America somewhere and heal those heathens. Well, the God I serve has a tremendous sense of humor, because he said, no, I love those people. So I want you to stay in Starkville. And I'm going to send some people to you who are going to bless your life more than you know how to measure. And I remember standing on the top of that hill at Henderson Junior High School when classes had changed, and I could look down at the ninth grade building. Here comes some up the sidewalk and some going down from industrial arts. And it was just absolutely wonderful. And that's where I was. So how did I get that job? Did anybody in here ever know Mr. Paul Armstrong? Okay. Yeah. Okay. So since Mr. Armstrong went to the First Baptist Church, I knew him, and I knew enough about his personality and that red hair that, it helps to know this. Some of you heard this story. So I was sent by Dr. Fenton Peters to see Mr. Armstrong to talk about teaching at Henderson Junior High School. So I get over there, and one of my friends, Jimmy Moore, had been the first industrial arts teacher at Henderson, and then he went in and told Mr. Armstrong, I've enjoyed this, but I can't teach here next year for less than $9,000 a year. Mr. Armstrong replied to him, well, Mr. Moore, we have enjoyed having you. And that created a vacancy. So I go over there, and Mr. Armstrong says, have a seat. And Mr. Anderson, it's good to see you, which is the first time he'd ever called me Mr. Anderson. He had other names. But he said, we have just lost the best industrial arts teacher in Mississippi, and we're looking for a replacement. It helps to know Mr. Armstrong's personality. I stood up out of my chair, and I said, Mr. Armstrong, it's been nice talking with you, but from what you say, I realize I'm no longer interested in this position. Some of you know, well, what's the matter? I said, Mr. Armstrong, I know you have a good school here, but anybody who is willing to settle for second place is not somebody where I want to work. Now, that was a bunch of bull, and he knew it and I knew it, but it was exactly what he wanted to hear. And many times, Mr. Armstrong would be making his way around the school district, and he'd pass the 9th grade building, come up there going toward the ward, and he would stop. We had that big old roll-up door on the east side of that building. He'd come, stop, pull up out there, and come inside to see what those boys were doing. We had some females in there later on. And I had some teachers at Henderson who said, Larry, why is it that Mr. Armstrong will come and visit with you, but we don't know that he goes into any other classroom in the school district unless the school board is with him? And so I said, well, he just knows he's coming to the #1 industrial arts program in the state. And there's some places that won't know there's no competition because we're blackballed. Anyway, so then I had several opportunities to be principal, and I decided, no, I'm enjoying what I'm doing here so much, I don't want to become some principal. Until Jim Hemphill retired left Armstrong Middle School, and that school did not have any doors in the classrooms, and the walls didn't go to the ceiling. And I thought, well, if there's ever a place that looks like it's going to be a little bit different, this might be the place for me. And Mr. Wayne Eason was my student teacher, and I felt comfortable in leaving it in his hands. And so I learned a lot about school law when I got to be principal at Armstrong for just those 3 years. And so then I was fortunate to, in a weak moment out at the Mississippi State, they had a position that was open, and a lady had been in that position, and so they hired me. And I had wonderful, wonderful years out there. They were wonderful years up until 2000. And I've enjoyed retirement since then. So we lived in Tupelo since June 2001. I've done a lot of traveling, speaking, and all that stuff. But nothing that I've done has been because of anything I've done. It's all because of what somebody else did for or with me. And I was privileged to be there and just ride along in the sidecar. I want you to understand that clearly. So I do have an ego, but the only reason I have an ego is because that I know that I was created by our Creator, and He doesn't make mistakes. But this is the most important one right here. So as long as you understand that. Now, Kathy and I have been, I love telling the girls at Walmart, we're kind of newlyweds. We hadn't been together very long. April 20th, I get that right, April 20th, 1963, when she was in the 6th grade at Overstreet and I was in the 9th grade at Starkville High School. And that's the day we started. Now, if Chad Anderson, our son, had come in one day and said, Daddy, I found myself a little 6th grader when he was in 9th grade, we would have had a different conversation. But Kathy tells everybody, don't worry about it. I was more mature than Larry then, and I was more mature then than he is now. So that's good. Well, so Dennis Sid at the Duplo Daily Journal wanted to do an article about my woodworking. So they came over one day, and I rolled my stuff out in the driveway, and I was just turning a pen. I was going to let Dennis take over. And he kept asking me this question. I said, no, Dennis, you need to understand, I'm just a simple man, but here's the clause that I use. I am so blessed by God that he has given me the tools, the time, and the talents to make for someone else who cannot make for themselves something that God has allowed me to be able to make for them. And that is such a blessing, I'm telling you, and I don't mind telling it. But remember, I'm just a simple man, and that's what he called it, simple man. And so that boy, if you came into my garage now, it looked a little bit different. There's stuff piled up around because I've been busy. I just posed for that one. Okay. Now, we're going to have a class here now. I have warned my former students, and I'm thankful. If you are one of the industrial arts students, raise your hand so this crowd can see you. I want y'all to look around here. I'm telling you. And some of them I've not seen in at least 45 years, but it is just, I can't tell you what it does to my heart because, man, there have been a lot of teachers in Starkville. There has never been or ever will be a teacher who's employed in the Starkville School District who loves their students and has more fun with their students more than Larry Anderson. And back then, I knew they were students, but I never wanted them to think like they were just a name in the grade book because we had so much fun together, didn't we? I mean, you know, when we can play horse, shoot basketballs inside the thing, shooting at those 55-gallon drums over there, erase those little old CO2 cartridge cars all over the place. When we could do punishment, corporal punishment back then. So when you need a paddle, I'd let them go make one, and then y'all get to decorate it and name it. So we had Mr. Green Jeans, we had Long John Silver, and I promise you, listen, one day, now Long John Silver, No, Mr. Green Jeans was a 1x4 that had broken. So I just got on the phone, called down to the 9th grade office, and I said, when y'all make the announcements, would you just announce that at recess, we're going to have a funeral for Mr. Green Jeans up here. Now, I promise, this is no joke, I bet there were 400 students who showed up there. And some of these crew, if they remember that day, some of them had gone out there on the east side of that building, and I bet it's still there. Dug a hole, buried Mr. Green Jeans out there in that thing, and they had a little service. And it was wonderful. But you know, you do stuff that's crazy. Oh my goodness, you know, making the little old solar hot dogs, you know, you cook your hot dogs with the power of the sun, and it's too many stories. Well,
don't step on the yellow line.
oh, no yellow line. Boy, you've been in bad trouble for that there, Keith. Okay.
I had 2 licks all through school. One of those was I used the yellow line. I remember that.
Oh boy. Okay. So thanks to Mark Anthony, this was our required woodworking project. And you learn a lot of things. You learn about measuring, and these are imperial, they're English measurements. So you need to know how long this is. You need to know how long this piece is, how this piece is connected to this piece, and the size of the screws makes a difference. Why is it, some of y'all can tell me, why do we use a 1.5-inch long screw that goes into the back of this wood? Can any of y'all remember why it's a 1.5 inch and not 1 1/4 or 2 inch? That's exactly right. Because the thickness of the wood is 3/4 of an inch, and you want a screw to go in to this wood at least as thick as the wood is to which it's attached. So 3/4 and 3/4 is 1.5, and that's why that is. And the screw is flathead, and you'll notice that it has wood filler on the end of it, and they had to choose wood filler that could take stain. What I'm trying to make the point is, there are a lot of lessons that came from this that never appear on here. So things like, in the sequence of this, they started out with one long board. So, well, how long does that board need to be? So if they say we're going to take 6 plus 10 plus 2 inches, if they cut a board that's 18 inches long, do you think that's going to be long enough? No, because they learned about something called the saw kerf. And that is the space that it takes up when you cut this board here. It's usually about a 1/8 of an inch. And they knew they had to cut 2 pieces. And they also learned you better cut this piece first. If you make it makes sense, because this is the shortest one. If you're going to leave it to last, you know how much wood you have left over to cut down to this 2 inches? It's like 2 1/4 of an inch, or 2 1/2 inches long, and you need to cut a 1/2 inch. Well, no, you cut this one first. So this was a great project just to learn those basic operations so that you could go on from there. And I'm so thankful. So Kent Daniels showed this. We have a closed Facebook group for our industrial arts class. And so some of these students could actually find their projects. And that's what Kent did. And then Mark Anthony, raise your hand, Mark. Everybody see Mark, okay? So Mark made a picture of his. I want y'all to look at something. Now, that's a pretty nice book stand, but I want you to look, right? Look at this thing. What? Oh, son. Man, alive. Whoa. Okay. So, when I was hired at Henderson Junior High School, I asked about, what's our budget? What do we have for money? And I remember when Fenton Peters looked at me like, budget? Do we need one of those things? Well, if they're going to make this, if I go down to see Mr. Van Fleming and tell him I want some 1x12 so I can rip them, and what do I do when I load them on the truck and they're looking for me to sign that little old paper? So what I did, before the students got there and started making, we had a little time to do some mechanical drawing, like they had learned that's orthographic projection. I would go around to construction sites and ask them, you have some stuff that you don't need? Don't save it for the winter and burn it in your pile. If you'll give me that stuff, then my students will be able to make something out of what you throw away. And it'll be a valuable lesson. And they did give us some of that stuff. Then, boy, this is what changed the whole world for me. One day I'm in Starkville, Main Street, right in front of the place where you can go get you some vitamin G, as Dr. John Perry called it, Starkville Cafe, vitamin G for grease. And so I was up there, and this distinguished businessman came out there, and I said to him, Mr. Arnold. Now, I've been knowing John Robert Arnold for years and years, and said, Mr. Arnold, we don't have any money in the budget to buy wood, and I was told, well, just charge the students a lab fee and they'll pay for it. I don't think you understand how much stuff we're going to make. So I said, can you help me? You know Starkville. Where could I go to get some wood for my students to make things that are really nice? And John Robert, now by the way, that picture over there on the right-hand side, somebody has just asked John Robert, can you describe Larry Anderson's character? He looks so puzzled, and he's thinking, how do I lie about Arliss Anderson's boy? Well, so Mr. Arnold was and remains a major factor in what I'm about to tell you for the rest of this program today. Because when I asked Mr. Arnold that question, he walked right in front of me and he put his hand on my shoulder and he said, I said, Mr. Arnold, and he put his hand on my shoulder and said, Larry, my name is John Robert. Now, I knew that, but I wasn't going to call him John Robert unless I was at home. So he said, you go down there, you leave here and you go down there straight to Herschede. And now Tim Pearson can tell, Tim, that is our spot right there. There used to be on the east end, thanks to Mr. Walker, who made these pictures. Don't tell him I forgot his first name. It's just I try to forget him as much as I can. But there used to be a big old truck parked there that they sent to the landfill where they just put the trash and stuff. So he said, you go down there to Herschede and you climb up in the back of that truck that's going to the landfill, you can probably find you some stuff. I promise you, I'm out there in that truck, and I did what Mr. Arnold said. Now, what, was I going to not obey John Robert Arnold? So I'm out there and I'm getting screws, I promise you, that long, anything, digging up through that trash. And out of this door, you can't really see it, but right in here there was a roll-up metal door, and it must have been break time because a fellow named Jimmy Kelly, now Jimmy, his wife's name is Pat, I think he goes by Jim now, and he doesn't remember this because I've talked to him on the phone. He doesn't remember me, he doesn't remember anything about it, and there are reasons for that. So he walked out there, and I'm up in there, and now Jason, we had this boy in school, he said, hey boy, what you doing? Well, I told him. He said, well, come on in here. Well, it so happens that Jimmy's job was to run the molding machine where he made the moldings for the clock doors. I still have a bunch of this stuff. And when he ran it through the machine started out just a rectangle piece, and it cuts off a little bit at one place until you wind up with something that's going to be good molding for those clock doors. If it's 1/16th of an inch off, it is not good. It goes to the landfill. That's because of the way Mr. Herschede believed. So at night I would dream that God, and pray to God, please let Jimmy make some trial cuts a little too much. Because a lot of students would do stuff like this and make for a picture frame or something. And on and on and on. And we have more of that stuff. Well, what a blessing that was. And by the way, Keith, you are such a good student of industrial arts. I brought something I'd like to give you. Now, you know that I love the Lord, and I like to do things that please Him. So I brought you a piece of holy wood here. Now, I have a small little book. I'm going to pass around and just let you look. It takes a while. But this is special. Chris, have you seen this book? Okay, I bet so. This is special, the book about the Herschede clocks. Amazing, and there's a whole story behind it. So I'm just going to pass it around. And I tell you what, you can throw at hurt somebody bad with that. So, I want you to take a lot of pride. Look at this. This is made in Starkville. This stuff went all over the world. Made in Starkville. Now, some of my students are going to know something interesting. At the top of the doors here, you see that little arc that's at the top of all these doors? They have to cut out that arc, and then they can't use it for anything else. Eventually, thanks to Tim Pearson, when he said, we could make something with those, they began just stacking them on pallets. And we go down there, and there'd be hundreds of those little half-moon arcs that made out of cherry, mahogany, and walnut pop. They would come back to the school. Now, we're riding back from Herschede back to Henderson Junior High, and Tim Pearson, hold your hand up, Tim. Y'all don't know what it means to me to see this man. Tim rode with me to Herschede probably nearly every day I went down there. And on the way back, he would start telling me stuff they could make with what we had just gotten down there. The more we went, the more those workers down there liked what we made. And one of the reasons is that the students would build stuff and then we'd take it back to the plant and give things to those men that they couldn't make. They could, but I would say, oh, why are you throwing this away? You could make. They said, no, Larry, we make clocks. We're not into making bowls and goblets, all that stuff. Y'all do that. We make clocks. So, the beauty of it is that it may seem like nothing to a lot of people, but that was pure gold. They'd take those half moons and glue 2 or 3 of them up. So they had like a deep half moon. Take a planer and plane the edge of those 2 sides, glue that together. Now they have a cylinder, which they could put on a faceplate and run over to the wood lathe, and they could make goblets and cups and all kinds of stuff with what was going to be thrown away. then carry it back down there and give it to those people. My favorite story, it takes too long to tell, but my favorite story is when I believe it was Ronnie Mize, riding me one day, and he said, Mr. A, I talked to Mr. Eddie over there. There were two black men down there. They talked to them, found out in their black church. I can't remember where it is. It's down south of Herschede. If you go down South Montgomery all the way and cut to your right, back, and it goes back to the left, there's a black church that's down there somewhere. I think that was their church, pardon me. It's a church attended by people who mostly are black. They did not have any offering plates. They just passed a hat. You say, you call that pass the hat. So these students said, you know, we might be able to make some offering plates for them. They came back and worked for weeks and weeks playing on that stuff, made 2 offering plates. I believe they were out of walnut. And one of the students in the school, they're redoing their house, so they had some felt. They took that felt off that pool table, cut it into a circle, and put it in the bottom of the plate. Well, the men didn't like that because they liked the sound of that money dropping in. Okay. Anyway, this is a picture on the front. I want to show y'all some of the handiwork that some of the students have shown me. Charlie Thompson, as far as I know, is the only student who ever went to industrial arts who figured out how to make a keyed mortise and tenon joint. And that's what's at the end of this thing out here, where this board comes through, this mortise is in the wood, and then you had a peg in the end of it to peg that thing, and he made that for his mother. And he went straight from that slanting bookshelf to this. And I've always thought that was a pretty good one. A lot of students would make gun racks and stuff like that. But you understood, while they're in the lab, we're teaching woodworking over here and metalworking over there and ceramics over here. And some of them were doing electricity and electronics over here, so they had to rotate. Didn't have very long to work on them. So they came in at recess. Glenn Walker, that's his name. So he's proud because he made something for his house. And we're not talking, we wouldn't even worry about any kind of grade. I just think it's fabulous that he was able to get 2 of them. In a minute, there we go. We'll see 2. I'll go ahead now. Now, Rob, raise your hand, Rob. Now, Rob, tell everybody where you and Tina drove in from today.
Florence, Alabama.
Florence, Alabama. See? It means a lot. Well, and so Rob has a business, but he does a lot of this stuff just for fun. But for stereo equipment, stuff like that, and he'll share stuff like this with us on our Facebook page. And this maple that he's using here, that's not bird's eye, what is that, tiger maple or what?
I believe that's tiger, yeah.
Yeah, oh boy, that's good stuff. Boy, this made me feel good. The old teacher? And so this grandson?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So this is what I appreciate about it.
I love it.
It's like the ripples in the water. We'll talk a little bit more about that later on.
Can I mention that today is my grandson Aiden's first day at military school. And today is going to be very trying.
Yeah, I bet he got ready before he was there. Well, some of the students found this leather stuff, and they figured out how to draw these designs on this leather, and then using the tools. Now, we didn't really teach leather working, but in their spare time, recess, lunch, and all that stuff, they'd make them. So here are a couple of examples. This is one, let's see here. Ronnie Christopher. Ronnie couldn't come, but now look, Ronnie painted this old Mississippi State one, and it's white with the arrows going through it. That's one color. That's one way you could do it. But then Mark had a different way, so he made it maroon with the white. And so the best I can recall, this the frame is made with Herschede wood. So wood that came from Herschede, and we just call it Herschede wood. So that's one of the things he made. So, boy, I'm really proud of this one. Look at this. Man. So it's 2 pieces glued together. And look, it looks kind of like a half moon shape, doesn't it? That ring a bell to you? So he put it on a faceplate, turned it on the lathe, a lot of sanding, and they had no instruction from the teacher. They all just did it. and it's beautiful. It's lasted this long. It's just wonderful. So this is a great bowl. It was made with, thank goodness for the people at Herschede. So I'm proud about this. I'm proud of the students who did that. Okay, the next thing we're going to look at is this. My slides are just a little slow. They must be on a different time zone. I may have to hold my computer up here. Pardon me, Keith. Okay, so Keith Westbrook, right here, made this one. This is a beautiful. So he took something that somebody else had made, and he got some cherry. Got some cherry from Herschede and built this. One thing I like about it is that the miter joints on this thing are correct. I mean, they're tight and right. One reason is because I had a student teacher at that time, some of you know, Mike Parker, Mr. O.F. Parker's son, and boy, I tell you what, Mike Parker is a craftsman, I mean, and it has to be R-I-G-H-T, right. And Keith has a nickname for him, calls him Saddy Daddy. So, but when Mike Parker helped with this, I knew this is going to last generations. And so Keith did a great thing. He took something, I guess somebody in your family did this. You didn't do this, did you?
No, my mother done that.
Yeah, okay.
She didn't trust me with a needle.
Well,
But that thing got about 7 coats of that lacquer on it.
oh, yeah.
Because every time I put it on there, Mike said he did it, would give me a piece of sandpaper, a piece of steel wool. And I said, I just put that on. Why ain't taking it off?
But that's the way Mike worked, wasn't it? Okay, and so, good night, Gussie. This is a serious one now. He cut up some deer meat on this. And it was made with some hardwoods from, it's like some mahogany, some oak that came from Herschede. Oh, that's some cherry in there, isn't it? That's cherry and oak. Oak probably came from Howard Furniture Company. But nonetheless, it was donated stuff, and that thing will be around a long time. Boy, I bet you could whack somebody with this thing and knock them down. Wow. Boy, if we just had that instead of paddles, we'd be in good shape.
I'm glad that I'm the only one in my family here.
Yes. Okay, this looks kind of rough, but this is John Scale's sister sent this a picture to us. Now, so what's important about this is these were made by some students who created their own little corporation. At the end of the 9th grade year, we had a book that Dr. Roy Hendricks wrote at the RCU at the college called Experiencing the Free Enterprise System Through Industrial Arts. And so for the last part of the 9th grade, we took that, and I required our 9th graders to create their own company. They had to do all the market research, brainstorm. They learned what brainstorming is, and then do the market research. They'd make prototypes, find out if somebody would buy it, what much they'd pay for it, and so forth. I better hurry. Anyway, so they made a lot of them. As a matter of fact, somebody asked, did we make any cheese boards? So John R. Lewis III said, yeah, we made 2 sizes, and there was a big size and a small size. But here's what it is. Being young entrepreneurs, you take all of the free stuff you can get and make something out of it. They were at a lower price point, so more people, including students, could afford them, to buy them. Now remember how much money they had invested in the wood to make those? Okay, I required every student to buy 1 share of common stock for $1. But they could, if they needed working capital of $200, they didn't have enough money raised, so they would sell preferred shares. And somebody could buy as many shares of preferred stock as they wanted, because the preferred stockholders get paid first at liquidation time. So when it came to liquidation time, I want you to look here. At $1 investment, each student on their $1 investment got $30 back. I'm not sure if this is a year, but at one time we got an old rusty wheelbarrow. And we got $1 bills and dumped them in that wheelbarrow and rolled them in so the students could see the benefit of what they'd gotten from their hard work and their good sales techniques. And the treasurer was there counting out those $31 bills to everybody. And I think Rob Parker one time had bought 10 shares of preferred stock. Well, he got his his common stock, but first he got paid for those 10 shares, $300 plus 30. Well, see. But the point is, think of the lessons that were learned. And so, and Mark Anthony and I talk a lot about those days when we had those little student-run companies, sort of like Junior Achievement. They were great. Now remember, the Herschede stamp is all over this. So I'm going to flip through some of Ronnie Mann's stuff. I wonder where he learned to do that work. Ronnie has a sense of humor. He shares some stuff with us every so often. I thought I'd throw that in. He had a new grandchild in July, so he made a changing table. But you see, this is not just ordinary. So he has a shop, and somebody said, "How do you keep it so clean?" And look what he said. Because had a lot of training for 2 years in junior high industrial arts class from some idiot. You always cleaned up and put all equipment away after every project, and I still do it today. Isn't that cool? Ronnie, he's a really nice man. Look what else he made. I mean, this is no joke. And he shares that stuff with us. So here was the front of his house, and he thought it could use something else. And so I thought I'd just go in the shop and build this. And I don't have the final project, but see, he's always updating the shop. Well, his backyard, he needed some entertaining space, so he built an outdoor kitchen back there. I wanted to put this next picture in here because I said, "Now, Ronnie, you like athletics. You like competitive games, don't you?" "Yeah." I said, "I see you into the cornhole stuff, and you got one special for you." So he could hit this hole on the cornhole game. That's good. Well, you can see that in my little closed Facebook group. Now remember, I left Henderson Junior High School in 1981. And all these years later, it vacillates between 141 and been high as 198. Former students in there carrying on fun with each other. Well, I was at the Bancorp South Arena in Tupelo, and I saw this. I thought, I can't miss that. All right. What's special about this? Now, one person in this room knows this is extremely special and important. Can anybody tell me what's special about that? Now, I'm going to tell you what I've been told. Whether it's true or not does not matter. This is Herschede Clock number 1.
Wow.
Number 1. And look at whose picture is beside it on the wall. So this is enshrined in Trey Hershede's home out in Godley, Texas. So it's time for somebody to go. Now, I hope it's not just to the bathroom. Okay, it's about time. Well, now I don't know if this is true, but I was told by, I believe Charlie Whitlock told me this, Chris, that the weights inside that, in that old clock, are loaded with mercury. Wow. But you know, they're not going to leak out. But here's another thing that I think is important. This used to be in Dick Hershede's house. Well, Dick had a son named Richard, some Rich Herschede. Y'all know Rich still lives here. He couldn't come today. He has a doctor's appointment. So Dick Herschede said this will be passed down to the oldest son. So Rich had it for a while. When Rich and Ree were going to leave Starkville, it was time to send it out to Texas to Trey. Well, because the whole family knows about this, and it's a big family, and I'm going to show you why. They know that Trey is the one who temporarily has use of this. And that's clock number 1. Some of you remember Stuart Vance. Well, Mr. Vance was very crucial in all this stuff. So he had this clock that they had had for 45 years, and it has a whole bunch of history behind that. So he and his wife, Mike, got to where they were old enough, they needed to do something with it. Well, they had 4 children, and he said, "What am I going to do when I have 4 children? Who do I give it to?" So they went to the governor's office, and the estimated value of that particular clock is $60,000 to $125,000. Recently, one of my students who lives in Alabama said to me, I never could afford a Herschede clock, but I have a little disposable income now, and I found one. The retired lady over in North Alabama has. I went over there to get it. She was willing to sell it. She wanted $38,000 for that clock. This is important because Rich was able to sign, he's in his right mind, y'all notice that, left-handed. And so he's the last clock that was shipped from Herschede. And there's a clock store in Douglasville, Georgia, that bought some of the last clocks that Herschede had. This man, I'm telling you, know that this man is like, I know you're not supposed to worship people, but I worship what he did. And he didn't, I never met him. I was afraid to go talk to him. And the people in the Herschede family tell me, oh, Larry, he would love to talk to you and hear some of your stories. But I was afraid to go talk to him. I wish I could talk to him now. I will someday. But this is the man right here. So I didn't have a good picture. Yesterday morning, I sent Trey a message. I said, Trey, don't you have a better picture than the one I have? So he sent me this one. He said, now here's one for fun. This is a rich dynasty. Okay, we have rich number 2 on here, and then Trey, number 3 is in the middle, and there's Dick, and he's paying close attention to the photographer. All right. So that's the rich dynasty right there. Boy, that's a great photograph right there. Okay, so what I want to talk about now is the ripple effect. When Dick Herschede put his finger down in the water, just like when he was working on that motor guide boat motor out there on the lake, he touched the water and it made ripples, and he couldn't tell where the ripples went. So he doesn't know all the ripples about what he did. So I found out that I could make some Lazy Susans. And so sure enough, I made this one out of oak and made that for Kathy. And I started making some. I made 12 of them. People started saying, oh, Larry, we want to buy one of those. We want to buy one. Where can I go get them? I said, well, I don't have any kind of online store. You can send me some money or something like this, but how much would you pay for it? They become a lot more expensive as time goes along. But look, Herschede mahogany and cherry bark oak that Mike Parker went with me to Massey's Sawmill. Some of you know about Massey's Sawmill down on Highway 25. That's where he got that stuff. Now, what's so important about that mahogany? I brought a little board of mahogany that I got from Herschede, and I want you to see. This is what's so important. You see the end of that? I thought for years that it was because normally when wood is green, you paint the end of it to keep it from drying out too fast so it won't crack. But I don't remember, I talked to one of the workers from Herschede in recent years, and I told him about this mahogany that was painted green on the end. He said, wait a minute. Are you telling me that you have a piece of mahogany that's painted green on the end? I said, yeah. He said, let me tell you. Dick Herschede said, I don't care where you have to go to get it. I want the absolute finest wood that's available anywhere in this world. That's what's going into our clocks. So this is green because it denotes the finest mahogany that they could find 50 plus years ago. And this is just one that they gave me at inventory time. They told me one time, Larry, this is inventory time. We have some stuff. I want you to just take it home and save it for 20 years. And make something nice for somebody. Well, I kept it for 50 years instead of 20 and decided it's a lot better to make something for somebody else. So we made that one and a few more. Lord have mercy. Okay, and remember, Dick Herschede, when you see this is some of that oak that I got from down at Sawmill, but I thought, let's dress it up and put some mahogany and walnut strips in it. Man, people love that stuff. They were in the back. Now, look at this one. What kind of wood do you think this is? Right, that's right. Nobody can guess. But I can't point to them. But look, up here at the top and then down here, you see a couple of holes in that thing. What do you think that came from? Pallets, that's right. These came from pallets, wood that was going to be thrown away.
Right.
And that sold for $100. And then this is the same thing. It's just all pallet wood. Amazing. And I've done a lot of speeches to students to tell them about how we judge people based on what we see from the outside. And man sees folks from the outside, but God sees the heart. And so I would take a pallet piece with brown paper on one end where I had planed it off and cleaned it off. It's all rugged and everything up here. And I said, look at this one. Would you want to? What could we do this? Well, that has to be thrown in the trash. It's no good. Well, they have some people we treat as though we think they should be thrown away in the trash. But look, when you look below the surface, look what happens, and their eyes get big. And so that's kind of what. So this is some walnut and some of that oak. And okay, this is the next to the last Lazy Susan. I'll get to the kind of key point here. I put on Facebook that this is the next to the last one. I had already made a Lazy Susan for David Rumbarger. David Rumbarger is the head of the Community Development Foundation in Tupelo and is the man probably mainly responsible for the Toyota plant coming up there. A fine man. And the Community Development Foundation, part of that is Chamber of Commerce, so he's a very highly respected man. I posted on Facebook that I was going to be selling this thing when I finished it. I hadn't 5 minutes gone by. He called me and he said, Larry, don't sell that one. I want to buy that. We're going to put that one in my camp house. When I made the first one, where I engraved a Bible verse, Matthew 18:18, I tell you truly, what is bound on earth will be bound in heaven, and that's it. He and his wife celebrated 40th wedding anniversary that way. So he said, how much I owe you? I said, that's the wrong question. It's not, what are you willing to pay for it? So I put it right back on him. So the first one, I think he gave me $150 for it, and I'll tell you what I do with that money. For this one, I think he paid me either $225 or $250 for it. And then he called all the workers down and wanted to tell them all about Herschede. He got so interested in it, he found somebody who wanted to sell a Herschede. And Chris is about a 7-foot-tall Herschede clock in the vestibule of the Community Development Foundation in Tupelo. And when these people come to town wanting to put in businesses, David Rumbarger carries them by and said, this is a Herschede clock. Okay, well, look. Y'all, this is my final vintage walnut Lazy Susan made with wood from Herschede. This is the last one. Herschede closed its doors in the 80s, 84 I believe, but I still have some precious wood they gave me. Told me to save it 20 years, I saved it 50. This afternoon I used my laser engraver to engrave my maker's mark on the bottom platter. When I put a little more polyurethane on there, we're going to sell it. Due to the special nature of this wood and the memories I recall as I made this, the price will be premium too. I shall publish photos of the completed Lazy Susan and blah, blah, blah. And just remember, this mighty fine wood would have been a part of a beautiful grandfather clock priced at more than $5,000. In 1978, I asked down there, what is the most expensive clock? And they said $5,000. Well, it changed a lot since 1978. In case you're wondering, the answer is a resounding yes. This is just my way of paying homage to and trying to keep the Herschede Clock Company tradition alive. So I went in my house and I got some of my mother's china and crystal and put it on there to make it look real pretty. And I've enjoyed having that thing in my house. So I engraved a little thing on the outside of it, and you can read that while I'm busy doing something over here. Don't worry, I just, like an elephant, I just hit the ground over here. So I have in this box what? Hey, tear it up. Treat it like that, it will be yours. Okay, y'all don't know. You haven't been with me in my garage workshop to work on these things, but I mean to tell you, what I'm about to show you is perhaps the most special thing I've ever made with wood. in this box is the final Lazy Susan. Now I'm going to ask for some help. Chris, would you help me just a moment, please? Now, I promise, the stuff like this I handle with special gloves. These are moved. So what I'd like to do is to let Chris just walk up and down and show you all this and show you how pretty it is. This, by the way, is Chris Johnston. Chris Herschede Johnston. Chris's father is Rich Herschede. Her grandfather is Dick. So while she's doing that, I had a little recording of this. I don't know what I did with the sound, but anyway, I just made this little video about showing everybody this and how much I love the Herschede family and everything they've meant to me. And so I want you to see it. So, have y'all seen it all in the back? Okay. So I've had people offer me a lot of money for that. It started at $250 and went up. I said, this is not an auction. So I've decided where it's going to go. This Herschede walnut Lazy Susan deserves to be in a special place, and this is where it's going.
Breakfast table that I've had redone, and Grandma always had a Lazy Susan on the table. So how
So
cool is
sweet.
that?
So, yeah, I'll let you, we'll pack it up in a minute, but
Wow. Wait a minute, that's my house.
so I'll tell you. All right, I was getting these phone calls and stuff and emails say, Larry, I will have that in my house. Multiple calls. A friend of mine in Starkville called me and she said, Dr. Anderson, you know me, you know how much I treasure the whole Herschede thing. You've gotten a lot of offers of money. I said, this is not an auction. I'm just going to sell it at some point. She said, whatever anybody offers you, I will pay you more. It will be in my home. Well, it's not. Because I get this Facebook Messenger thing one day. Look here. When I read this, I got down to the part and said, my grandparents always had a Lazy Susan on their breakfast table that I now own. I said, that is it. It is no longer for sale. This has been months ago. That Lazy Susan has sat in my living room on display, and I've told people about it. I've shown that to people, and I said, it's the Lazy Susan. Some people might think that's all it is, but it's what it represents. And for me to have made that, now, I used to be embarrassed about this, but I'm not embarrassed anymore. Often, when I make things for friends, especially when I know they're going to get it, it's not uncommon for me to have to wipe the tears off of it when I leave, because y'all are so precious to me. And the good Lord has let me live these 75 years. I don't know how much longer I have, but every moment that I have used working on this and wiping it and sanding it and doing it more, I knew where it was going. I would go back and I'd take things off of it. If it wasn't perfect, my motto is, if it's not good enough for me to give it to my mother and make her say, wow, it's not good enough for it to go out my doors. So that's where Chris came from. Now let me tell you what happened. It goes beyond this. So this is Hunter Arnold. By the way, Hunter is the one who gave me that book that's going around. And Hunter and 4 of his friends, they're like the 5 Musketeers. Some of you know them. It's Hunter Arnold, Anil Bhansali, Jay MacArthur, Frank Bonner, and Scott Maynard. Those 5 do everything together. So while we were in the negotiation, people wanting this Lazy Susan, so I get this contact from Patty Keller. Patty, Bonner. And she said, Larry, Tina, Hunter's going to turn 60 this year, and we want to put our money together and buy that thing and give it to Hunter. I didn't tell her that it's already been, well, I told her it was already picked out for somebody. Now, I made this little video of this little Lazy Susan that I made out of mahogany. Genuine, it's important what you call it, genuine Honduran mahogany. You know you cannot get that anymore. They took bulldozers and bulldozed down the jungles where the mahogany trees stood above the other ones. And I talked to a friend of mine in the Organization of American States. Why is it you can't get it anymore? There's some group that controls the mahogany and maybe some other exotic woods going into and out of Central and South America. He said, Larry, don't even make contact with them. They're like the cartel, the mafia. If you let them, you contact them, they know who you are, and you don't know what's going to happen to you. So I made this and wrote a little tribute note on the back of it for Hunter for his 60th birthday, and I recognized John Robert and Mary Ann and for what John Robert had done in helping to create Arnold Industries so that Herschede could be saved for a little bit longer. So we had an event. We got these together. Well, Hunter didn't know anything about this, but we went and started the Claiborne, I don't know what it's called now, but the Claiborne down there on South Montgomery. Well, this is Miss Frances Langerfeld and Mary Ann Arnold, they down there. So this batch of folks got together one Saturday afternoon so that we could give them one of the Herschede pens. What did I do with those things? Oh yeah. So made a batch of these things, and I put them in boxes and put them on a little cotton stuff, and gave each one of these ladies one of these pens. And there's something special about the pens, and I'll show you in a little bit. Matter of fact, here's one of them right there. So all these folks, so there's Ms. Arnold, Hunter, and then Tina, and Ms. Bonner, boy. And then on the back is Frank and Patty, and then y'all remember Mary Steele, Arnold, it's right there next, and then Christy Savage, Stevens, Thomas. And then these 2 ladies to my right are Hunter and Tina's 2 daughters, both of whom are medical doctors. And then David Langerfeld and Martha and Charlie Langerfeld. So we had a great time honoring these 2 ladies and telling a bunch of stories, and I wanted pictures. And so there's Ms. Arnold and her flock. So Hunter and Tina, I asked if they'd make a picture of Hunter and Tina holding that Lazy Susan. Well, at that event, I surprised Hunter with that thing because on the back of it, it's a tribute to Hunter on his 60th birthday and for his friendship over these years. And it's fun to engrave stuff like that on there. And so there they are. So I just go out in the driveway and roll my stuff out there. And while I had it, I looked, I said, wait a minute. Got a lot of pieces of wood, walnut. Look at all these things. Man, you can see, funny, look at this one right here where I was testing some engraving on that one. And I'm using my safety. I got my push stick in there, Johnny. Okay, but look at that one. It's look like a U. Well, that's what's left after you cut the circle out for the Lazy Susan. There's a lot of good wood left in there. So I took a little time and I cut up 147 of those blocks of wood that were good enough to make one for all people in the down through 4 generations of the Dick Herschede family tree. And this is not complete because, let's see, from Tristan Harris, Farah and CJ, is that it? BJ. TJ, that's right, TJ, that's right. And there's another one that needs to be added. And so I'm going to send one of these pins home with Chris and just see if she can figure out a way to get it to that child. I even made one before TJ was born. So he's a nice little, it was fun. Let me tell you where I gathered from all this. I got to meet all these people. We created a closed Facebook Messenger group for the Dick Herschede descendants. And those people allowed me into their little world. And we've had the most wonderful conversations about, did I get everybody? And then I would mail them to them. So Allison, and of course, Dr. Abraham, I had to use a spreadsheet. Okay, and see, Rich Herschede number 1, and we go down through each of the generations. And so there was a picture of the 147 pins that I was getting ready to mail out to everybody. And so Allison was nice enough to send a picture of what they had. And in that little strip of paper, I put that inside of every box because some of these pins were going to people who were in Dick Hershede's family tree, but had never met him or known him. I wanted them to know what he started and what continues through that family. And Chris, I think y'all still get together about every 2 years or so. And adults. Well,
As kids do every 3, all of us, and then my parents' generation every 2 years.
well, it is special. I just think it's great. And there's just some more of them. So I just look at them and I'd see all that walnut and I'm thinking, man, just think what that would have been. And it did not go to a landfill, but we made something worthwhile out of it in honor. So this is just from pictures I made. This one was made for Rich. And I had turned some more to make more. And so it's just a bunch of pieces to the pin that I just assembled and put together. And when I put it on the lathe, I finally figured, well, I've turned 1, I can turn 2. So I turned 2 at a time. And there's no need in going through that process. If it was just students, I would have to teach them about why these notches are cut out there so it's flush to the end of the little brass tube stuck up in there, all that kind of stuff. Okay, and so, boy, when you look at that, well, it's just beautiful. Oh, it's just beautiful. And that's before we started the final finish on them. And we know, and while I'm working on it, I'm thinking, I don't know who's going to get this one. But I know it's either going to be somebody in Dick Hershede's family or somebody who wants one, because so many people were saying, oh, Larry, I want one, I want one, I want one. I said, okay, once we serve the Herschede family, whatever's left over, I will sell for $80 each. Now, it may sound like a lot of money, but my purpose was I'd put about $7,000 into this project, buying the hardware and just getting ready, and the finish and everything, which is not cheap, and don't count my time. And so I decided, what am I going to do with all this extra money I'm going to have when I sell all these things? And it turned out of the $7,000, I think I got back about $3,600. So I still need to collect money on some other things. And there they are. There's all those little blocks lined up. They have the brass tubes glued in them, and they're simply waiting to be put into the lathe and make into pins and box. Okay, so the money is going, we're saving that money, and we've already sent $200 to St. Jude in the name of Dick Herschede Family and Friends. And so we will send more, because I'd picked that one, and then some of the members of the Herschede family said, oh, he liked that. Well, when they said that's all I needed. Oh, I made some letter openers and stuff like that, because I want something that has some utility, something you can really use. I want something you can really use. So I'll show you something that I made that's very useful. So I brought one, and what I want to do is to award this to the person who deserves it the most. And because I know Tim is going to go home and make something amazing with that. If you can't have fun, pull the sheets back up and go back to sleep. And so the man in Nevada made me some maroon and white rosin, and the man in Jasper, Alabama, who does not know about the lawyers at Mississippi State, who will get him for that.
I checked on that. That's not the official logo.
It's not, but it's what's the name for this one? But there's some that are like the ones of the.
The maroon and white is the first, I think. And
Oh.
the lady in the licensing division out there told me that.
Bless Pat, I'm glad to know that, because now, boy, So I know a lot of ladies who like to do quilting. And so these right here, these up to 18, those are made out of Bethlehem olive wood that are guaranteed over 500 years. And I thought that was old. So David Langerfeld told me, Larry, you know the olive trees in the Garden of Gethsemane are not native. They were brought in. And if you think 500 years is old, how long ago do you think it was when Jesus' disciples sat underneath the olive trees? So he said 1,000 years is nothing. I have 3 paintings of Joseph in my garage workshop because that's who I always idolized, because Joseph was a carpenter, I thought. I've learned different. And I thought, when y'all get to heaven, you can go see everybody. Go see Solomon and ask him a question and see if he can come up with an answer to that question. You go where you want. I'm going to go find Joseph because I want to find out. If you were a carpenter and you had Jesus Christ, the Son of God, in your shop, if you got a splinter in your finger, or if you cut yourself sometime, you don't have to worry about it. You got the Son of Man right there, and you just heal that baby and go on. Well, anyway, so those have been fun. Now I made a few more pins and stuff up and down the line. Okay, now you Mississippi rednecks, I want you to tell me what kind of wood that is that's in this letter opener right here. Ma'am? You know I'm at home. I know I'm at home. I've asked this question to people. When I hold it up, they say, oh, they guess all kinds of things. Canary wood? No. Well, it's called Osage orange. But we call it bodock. And man, on Lockdock Road, I know we get up in that bodock tree and throw those balls at those cows, not thinking about all that stuff we're getting on our fingers in the process. But that's bodock. My nephew, Al Denson, made his millions in Christian music. Has a ranch out in North Texas he bought from Ross Perot about 20 years ago. And Kathy and I go out there often. Kathy's sister is his mother. So they out there had this old raggedy looking boot jack out there, and I said, y'all need a good boot jack. So I made this out of oak, and then made this, it's 20 inch made out of that mahogany. Well, the reason it's so important to Al, they have people coming from all over. They entertain all the NFL referees and their families, all the Major League Baseball umpires and their families. And the chapel out there is, I think, the #2 wedding destination in Texas. So the reason it's important to him is because his grandmother, Mrs. Denson, maybe some of you knew his uncle, Billy Jack Denson, worked for years in the Herschede plant and in the shipping department. And so that's very important. That's a 20-inch one there, and they use it for all kinds of stuff. Well, I don't drink, but I did cave in one time and make somebody a bottle stopper. And I tested it I said, if I can make it out of a 2x4, that's it. So that was a 2x4 right there. But his is fun. I had a friend in Pontotoc who built a crib for his grandchild, James, and built a lot of it out of walnut, and he put the pivot point at the top so that cradle will swing, but they needed a way to lock it in. He said, can you make me some pegs? So I did. I made these 2 pegs. And you see the top of that is where the dead center went in, or the live center on the dead center end. Well, I shaped that back to get rid of it. And man, they think that's really something. And it is. So now I'm having fun. I made something just for the fun of it. I made this, I thought, what about Mississippi State? So this right here is Purple Heart, and this is hard maple. So I made that, and just for fun, and people said, "Oh, I want one, I want one, I want one." I thought, Lord have mercy. So I made the mistake of saying, well, y'all send me your name, and guarantee you want one, I'll put you on the waiting list. Well, phase 1 waiting list had 26 names on it, and so I would make them. And I'm not even through making them all yet. There's the bottom platters. And I wanted to show you that I did have a plan. I numbered all of these so that I could know which piece goes where. Made me a little spreadsheet, Dr. Ruth, so that I would know that for platter, piece number 1 was going to be Purple Heart, and it's going to be 4 inches wide and 15 1/4 inches long. They don't all need to be the same length. And so I would just cut them out and stack them up and get ready to pull them out and make them. I don't like mass production, but it was fun. Well, then there were so many more people who, I said, I'm through. I can't take any more orders. Well, they said, well, come on, just keep my name anyway. So I had a phase 2 waiting list. There's like 20 names on it. Now they want me to announce to the Hale State Dog Pound Facebook group that I'll make some of those in phase 3. If I do, it's going to be a whole lot more, but I'm going to tell you what. I have so much stuff to do now that it takes me after Christmas to even get started because I do not get in a hurry. I figure once I get in a hurry, you're going to sacrifice the quality. And remember, if it's not good enough for my mama, it's not going out here. So, I want to ask, Keith, you're a good man. Would you, I have another Lazy Susan here that I've made. You don't mind helping me, do you?
No, sir.
That's exactly the way he answered me. So, look here. Now, what I want to say to you is this is not for sale. I can't sell it because of that. And Mark Anthony has been my advisor. Don't you do it because those licensing police will come and get you. So I just give them away. The one you see pictured was made for Everett Kendard and Henry Sue. This is made for somebody special. So you can read. Do you want to read what's on the back of this thing? Why not stand up? Come on now, you can do it.
I can't hardly stand up. David Simmons.
How about that? Well, David, come on up here. It has been the builder's true pleasure to make this Lazy Susan, especially for David Simmons. As a token, as a token of my sincere appreciation for the enduring, genuine friendship that David has shared with me for many years. David truly is a man who is considered one in a million by countless people. And I take great pride in calling him my true and abiding friend. Now you know why David has turned out to be such a fine man? You know he's a Zig Ziglar certified trainer, speaker, and people all over the world. I have been in a room with them from all over the world, and they come to attention when David speaks. They really do. Matter of fact, when the Ziglar people said, which of you all want to have the last word? And they would all point to David. That's because he was a disc jockey at WSSO when he was 14 years old. But when Mr. and Miss Simmons lived just off of Magruder Street at Mississippi State, I lived on Octock Road, and of course we had a lot of fun. So they would get to where they need to go to some meeting, and they'd say, Larry, could you babysit David? I said, oh yeah. So he had... That's for David and Dixie. Wow. And I'm telling you, brother, boy, I love fixing that one up. See, money can't buy what you make for friends. But you can have some friends with too much money that want to give you some of it. So that's been one of the joys that I've had. And when Everett and Henry Sue went up to Cape Cod for the baseball season, they carried this, and they got to Illinois, and they said that Ron Polk was so enamored with that. He said, loved it, couldn't figure out what it was. So as they came home, and I asked David one day, David got me into this. On Wednesday mornings, we go up to the Episcopal Church in Tupelo, at the Saints Brew, and we serve food to the helpless, hopeless, and homeless between 7 and 8:30. What a blessing that is. And so I asked him one day, I said, should I make one of those for Ron Polk? In David's wisdom, he said, Ron Polk won't have anywhere for it in his house. It'll have to go in some display case somewhere. And besides, if you make it like that, it will make Everett's less valuable. And so it's not. Of course, I put a little inscription on the back for that. So we have reached a point when if you have any questions, you just keep them to yourself. But I will have to say, I have words of thanks to Derek and Arnold and all of the friends of the museum and all of my friends in Starkville who gave up what you're going to do to come join and spend some time with us today. It means more to you. It means more to me than I can ever imagine, not to you. But you really made sacrifices to be here. And so I thank a lot of people. And one of the people I need to give special thanks to is Frank Childs. Frank, as you know, is an insurance agent, State Farm insurance agent. And when all these pens I made were for sale, time out, I'm going to come back to Frank Childs. I made something else with Herschede wood. This is made with genuine Honduran mahogany from Herschede Clock Company, and I'm going to give Chris the first set. I intend to give a set of these coasters to all of Dick Hershede's 7 children. And so there's the first one, and it has Herschede engraved on the front of it, and a little message on the back. And you can't see it, but it's been a lot of fun. Just got the thing on the front, and I put something on the back. Kathy says that's too much writing, and it probably is. Well, there's a company in Tupelo that needed some, and so we use. This is pallet wood, I think, made this one. But I had some more purple heart and some more maple, so of course we got to make some. Can't put the Mississippi State logo in here if we sell them, but if we give them away, I'll burn those things in there all day long. And now these are especially pretty, I think. These are cherry, and this is about all the cherry I have left from Herschede, and so it's wonderful. I forgot to give these out. I was going to get somebody to help me to give these out, but I have some business cards here that if they smell like they've been on fire, it's because they have. And so I just burn them. Let's see, if y'all just take a stack and Patricia, will you help me? Let's see, I'll give these boys on the front one, these men on the front one. But it kind of smells like it's been burnt.
That's where my holy wood come from, man.
That's right, yes, exactly. The holy wood came out of that. So, anybody in this room, y'all, I'm so glad to have Chris here. Now, let me tell you what Chris does for her career. She is, as I understand it, an elementary school counselor in Senatobia. And boy, I tell you what, counselors are really important and more these days. So y'all be sure and tell Chris hello. She's going to have to scat from here. She has other things to get back to Senatobia. But it means the world to me, Chris, for you to have come. And we can put this back in the box and you can carry it home. And you can say, Trey, if you had brought your lazy self from Texas to Starkville, you might have gotten something. Anyway, I thank y'all for coming. And Derek, you have a benediction or something?
Or whoever got that room.
How wonderful.
I regret that I did that. It was a wonderful learning experience.
Well, I tell you what, we had fun. Look, boy, we saw them in a lot of different configurations. Well, maybe it was Lawrence the Carpenter might have been the one who decided he wanted to take a different route of getting those screws into that wood. Is that right? Oh, wow.
Was it Bob Fuller or you that did those two pieces of hair that you put together?
That must have been Bob, because we didn't do any of those. Remember, we had to go get wood from. And I say this: most of the wood that we got from construction sites were gotten during the daytime. Most of it. Well, thank y'all. And the reason I say Frank Childs, when I sold those pins after the Herschede family had theirs, Frank said, I want to buy 2 of them. Well, Frank Childs has given me so much over the years. Cameras, like many $100 cameras. When Joe Baumgartner would buy a new camera, then Frank had to have one like his. So we had one, and he'd give them to me, pass them down. And Frank was one of our officers in the National Guard, so he's also kind of a double half-cross kin some way or another. And Frank said, I want to buy 2 of those pins. Well, I said, okay, he's going to do something with that second one, maybe give it to his son, with whom I spent some significant time in my office while I was a principal at Armstrong. And he's now an airline pilot. So it's not exactly like Mike Kent. Some of you know Mike Kent, but now Mike Kent on Facebook is the funniest thing in the world. Mike grew up outside the city limits in Starkville, but he sent a cartoon one time of the cab of a truck, 18-wheeler truck. Said, my teacher told me to stop looking out the window. I'd never make anything in my life for just looking out the window. She didn't know I'm looking out the window all the time driving that truck. So, but Frank Childs bought 2 of them, and I happened to be up here the day that Frank came by to give Derek his second pin so that it can be given to the museum to go with the other Herschede things. So thanks to Frank Childs. So if y'all don't have a State Farm insurance, or if you have it with Jack Forbes, go get it and take it away from Jack and get it from Frank. I guess we're through with this. Treat it like it's yours. If you tear it up, it will be. Okay. But I have a little hugging and stuff to do, and then we'll split up. Well, thank y'all for coming.